written by Mahahisi Goi in response to the bombings at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Lead from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead me from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead me from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our heart, our world, our universe. The Peace Testimony of the Religious Society of Friends, New Zealand, 1987. We actively oppose all that leads to violence among people and nations, and violence to other species and to our planet. Our refusal to fight with weapons is not surrender. We are not passive when threatened by the greedy, the cruel, the tyrannical, the unjust. We will struggle to remove the causes of impasse and confrontation by every means of nonviolent resistance available. We must start with our own hearts and minds. Together, let us reject the clamor of fear and listen to the whisperings of hope. It's not that well known that we know now that 3 nuclear bombs were dedicated to Sudbury. One for the smelter at Coniston, one to the marshalling yards downtown Sudbury, and one to the smelter refinery at Copper Cliff. The Soviet military designated these as primary targets. And Russia today has just announced within the last month the design, commissioning, and readiness for use of 20 new nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles, each of which is capable of carrying multiple warheads, in contravention of the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty. That was largely negotiated because of the effort of Project Plowshares in Sudbury in the mid-90s, when there was an impasse with the French, the English, the American, and Canadian negotiators. No one was willing to step up to the table and resume negotiation. 40,000 postcards were sent from Sudbury, the highest per capita of any city in Canada, urging the Liberal government to jumpstart the negotiations, which they did. That's a remarkable testament to what local people acting with local passion and fervor can accomplish. Wayne, I'd like to introduce Howard Weidman of the Waters Mennonite Church. And perhaps at the very end, we might all observe a minute of silence after all witnesses have finished, as they did at Hiroshima earlier today. A complete moment of silence, a minute of silence. Howard?
Last week when John announced that there was going to be a ceremony out here, my wife wanted a definitive Mennonite statement. Well, I made a few phone calls, but John's already mentioned Plowshares. That organization comes from prophets from long ago, before Christ, talking about beating swords into plowshares. And the Mennonite Church was instrumental in getting Plowshares going. And even the first name in the Bible, with Abraham being called by God to start a great nation, it was so that the Jewish people would be a blessing. And in Abram, all the families of the earth would be blessed. Sometimes that's missed with modern day Israel having the same name as the words in the Bible. So I have a prayer here from Plowshares from the internet. Gracious God, we dream of a world free of poverty and oppression, and we yearn for a world free of vengeance and violence. We pray for your peace. When our hearts ache for the victims of war and oppression, teach us to remember that you healed people simply by touching them, and give us faith in our ability to comfort and heal bodies and minds and spirits that have been broken by violence. When the injustice of this world seems too much for us to handle, let us remember that you fed 5,000 people with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Give us hope that what we have to offer will turn out to be enough, too. When fear of the power and opinion of others tempts us not to speak up for the least among us, teach us to remember that you dare to turn over the tables of money changers, and give us the courage to risk following you without counting the cost. When we feel ourselves filled with anger at those who are violent and oppressive, let us remember that you prayed for those who killed you, and give us compassion for our enemies too. When we tell ourselves that we have given all we can to bring peace for this world, let us remember your sacrifice, and give us the miracle of losing a little more of ourselves in serving you and our neighbors. Walk with us, Lord, as we answer your call to be peacemakers. Increase our compassion, our generosity, and our hospitality for the least of your children. Give us the courage, the patience, the serenity, the self-honesty, and the gentleness of spirit that is needed in a world filled with turmoil and terror. This peace poll means special for me because I was born in Stouffville, Ontario, named after Abram Stauffer, who with his wife Elizabeth Reeser moved from Pennsylvania to Upper Canada, 1804. And it's a few years ago that Stephen Harper thought, through his Member of Parliament for Stouffville, that Stouffville would be a good place to commemorate the War of 1812. And so there was a bit of a pushback. The Swiss Mennonite are not much for speaking up to government, but since then we've had some Russian Mennonites. And there is a plaque in Stouffville, peace plaque. Some of the words on it say, "The peace teachings of the Christian tradition deeply shaped by the faith of the early settlers, 1800s, and caused them to wrestle with what it means to be people of God's peace, especially during times of conflict and war. As pioneers of conscientious objection in Canada, their commitment to the work of peace and reconciliation continues to stand witness and in Stouffville and around the world." And then something a bit earlier, the beginnings of the Mennonite Church, 1552, there was lots of accusation and conflict in the beginning of the Reformation, especially with regards to Vatican and Catholic Church. Menno Simons replied to false accusations. "The Prince of Peace is Jesus Christ. True Christians do not know vengeance. They are the children of peace. Their hearts overflow with peace. Their mouths speak peace, and they walk in the way of peace." Amen.
I said we have the moment of silence now, and then Stefan, could you start the music?
This land is your land, this land is my land. From Monte Vista to the Vancouver Island, from the Arctic Circle to the Great Lake waters, this land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me